everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon's live stream. My name is Matt Fogarty. I am the founder of Cherry Willow Apparel, and I'm really excited to be doing these live streams again. It's been a little while, and I had some really exciting updates that I want to share with everyone off the top. And we have a really exciting guest that I was getting able to converse with backstage. Excited for you all to be able to learn more about her and her amazing company and story. And I will introduce her here in a couple of minutes. But right off the top, I just wanted to give a few updates on some of the work that we've been doing at Cherry Willow since we all last came together. So obviously, as you know, we are an apparel organization, and we partner with nonprofits and community-aligned businesses to help create co-branded apparel to really bring their vision and mission to life and spark conversations. And a lot of the work that we do at Cherry Willow is about giving people an opportunity to share their stories and learn more about each other. Some of the phrases that we have are like the human eyes, not other eyes, empathy over everything. And if you've read any of the writing or any of the material on the website, you know that I have a deep belief in people and that we all have a light that we were meant to shine on the world. And so what we've been up to recently is we've been out live at a lot more events. I got to connect actually with Jesse in Reveting, who is the person that produces this amazing live stream out in Seattle a few weeks ago. Have been doing some other traveling, getting to connect with wonderful nonprofits. And so we are getting much closer to launching our own Cherry Willow technology platform, which is really exciting. As all of you know, I did a bike ride last summer from Sacramento to San Diego, which we called our Pedal for Progress ride. We have our next Pedal for Progress ride that we will formalize the announcements here soon. But for those live show viewers, you get the first kind of sneak peek. I'm going to be going from Jacksonville down to Miami, and that's actually going to happen next month. So, stay tuned to Cherry Willow's channels and, our LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the different TikToks and feeds, where we're going to have some really cool content that comes out of the Pedal for Progress Florida ride, and then also be able to find out about all of our amazing partners, the incredible work that they're doing in their communities, and be able to support them through creating really cool apparel, representing and advocating for those organizations, and helping them get connected with more people in their community. So those are just a few of the updates that I had off the top, but really excited to be bringing in our guest today, and would love to introduce Heather. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Yeah. I was really excited when I was learning a little bit more about your company, and just from the brief interaction that we had backstage. I know we're going to have a lot of synergy between kind of how we operate and why we're doing the work that we're doing. But I'd love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your company to our audience.
Thank you so much. Well, my name is Heather Roberts, and I am the founder of a company called Mom Bomb, and we sell all natural bath and shower products, but we donate 100% of the profits to help moms in crisis. And what that means is that no matter what is happening with a mom, we will step in and help fortify them while they're going through a crisis by giving them $500 towards a service to help stabilize them. And then we offer them workforce development to help stabilize them after the crisis. We're sold currently in about 1,000 supermarkets, and we are going to be launching at the end of the year into Walmart and Whole Foods.
Wow, that is amazing. And I love the synergy behind supporting people in crisis. As you know, in Cherry Willow, our focus is on people experiencing homelessness, which oftentimes, I'm a single dad and I have 3 little ones myself. I believe on your website, you're a mom of 6. Is that right?
I am. Yes. And how we got here was that I got sick in 2017 and I couldn't be a mother to them. I couldn't make meals and I couldn't do laundry. I couldn't do anything for them. And it became obvious very quickly that I was not alone. There are a lot of people that are one crisis away from losing everything. And I made a promise to myself that if and when I got better, I would dedicate my life to figuring out how to help those people in the middle. Just like what you did, Matt, actually.
Yeah. And so I don't know, you probably aren't aware of this, but my mom has cancer, and she's had cancer since I was very young. I think maybe I was 8 or 9 when she had her first diagnosis. And so like she was always the most selfless person that I've ever had the opportunity to meet, and she is a large reason of why I do the work that I do. And the name Cherry Willow actually comes from the 2 streets that I grew up on, where despite her battling through cancer, we were always out still serving others in the community. And now that I learned that kind of caused some self esteem issues for myself, because I was like, how am I going to ever be as good as my mother? And I never will be, but that's not going to stop me from trying. And the unconditional love that she showed for others is what I'm trying to create at Cherry Willow, is unconditional love for all people, and particularly for those people experiencing homelessness. So as you kind of went through your health struggles there in 2017, how did you come up with the name Mom Bomb, which is, I love it. It's such a catchy name. Like if you could talk to me a little bit through about the origin of the idea, and how it's kind of manifested itself beyond what the inception.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started because I started making bath bombs. Bath bombs were helping me. I was having neurological conditions and I was taking baths. And I realized that the biggest producer of bath products in the United States is filled with endocrine disrupting garbage. And there was nothing in the supermarkets that was a reasonable price that was a natural alternative. And so I was like, I think there's some opportunity for us to do this better. So there was some white space. And then we got into doing more like Epsom salts and other products, bubble baths and stuff like that. So it's all personal care now, but it started off as bath bombs, and that's where really Mom Bomb came from. I just started making them in my kitchen, and then I started giving them away, and people asked if they could buy them. And I thought, oh, well, if somebody wants to buy them, maybe I could just use this to fortify the nonprofit that I want to start. And that was really the impetus for starting it.
That's amazing. And I love the model, because it's very similar to what we help support people do on the Cherry Willow side. Is you have an idea for a business or for a product or a service, but also everyone has a cause that they care about and they're passionate about. And if you can be creative, there's a really cool way to tie both of those things together. So I'm curious for you, when you think about success today, like how has your definition evolved from when you first started the company to where you are today?
That is such a great question. And I love it. Goes back to mothering, and it goes back to what you were saying about your mother. And there's an interesting story that'll bring this full circle. But when I worked at corporate America, I didn't get a promotion one time because my boss told the person hiring that I was too motherly.
Wow.
And that really stuck with me, right? Because to me, that was what it was important to my team, was that I took care of them like a mother. And ironically, they outperformed everybody else, which is why I was up for the promotion to begin with. And so it really made me think that in organizations and in cause, especially CPG companies, a lot of times what I see happen is that founders like us, we start with the right intention of wanting to do something with a mission, but over time, the capitalism part of it strips out the mission because there's money there on the table. So for me, it was like, how do I create something that can take care of people, that can also have a return to shareholders without degrading the very thing that we're in business to do, which is take care of moms. And that was the puzzle. And it's been humbling, to say the least.
Yeah. I think like a lot of our problems in our current society stem from people putting profit over people. And it seems like, based on what you shared, and certainly what we're trying to build at Cherry Willow, is we want to put people over profit, and also be able to create ways to just help people. Like I think that deeply believe that most people are good and they want to help others, but maybe they don't feel like they can, or they're not sure how to. And so like a lot of our work is about removing some of these barriers and showing people that an act of kindness can make a big difference. I actually had a story with someone that I was interviewing that's experiencing homelessness, that the gentleman shared that there was one of his friends who was, unhoused and was really struggling with his mental health, and was considering suicide. And someone stopped and was kind to them that day, and in this person's word, it completely changed their whole aspect, and they didn't end up going through with it. And so it's like that's just one act of kindness that anybody is capable of doing. It doesn't cost you anything to be kind. And you never know, like, the burden that someone else is carrying. And like that to me is just how we can move through life and just support each other. And I love how you have it, like, you are wanting to help moms that are in distress, and the best way to do that is to accumulate capital so you can do more good, but you don't want to let that capital accumulation become the priority over the people that you were set out to create.
Well, and that's the biggest problem with every mission-driven business that exists as it is today. And to your very astute point, everybody wants to help everybody else. I mean, you and I will never meet someone in a restaurant that says, I don't want to help somebody, but the systems that we have to opt into to survive don't allow us the opportunity. So at corporate America, I had to leave my values at the door after I crossed that threshold so that I could be a good corporate citizen. And that ultimately is not what will make money in the long run. It might in the short term, quarter over quarter, but those of us that know better know that making money is a byproduct of doing the right thing by the people. And so until we start to look at things over a little bit longer term with more patient capital that's interested in ecosystems like we're building, we're going to continue to have this churn and burn of not only human capital, but companies that just get extracted by private equity and everything else. So we have to build these new companies, and we have to find ways to get them funded, which is really difficult because we're dealing with 40-year-old capitalistic systems that only look at extraction models. They don't look at the give and the take of the models. And that's where the real opportunity is. And the fact that funders haven't figured this out yet is confounding to me, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I think that was really well said. And certainly, coming from the startup world, getting that funding and that relationship with the lender that believes in the business, but gives you actual runway to build something that's sustainable, that's extremely challenging. The financial pressures, especially on early stage organizations, are very real. And that's why 95% of businesses don't make it past that 5-year mark, because the capital requirements and the need to scale, without burning out people. And so you've obviously been in the business for a little while, and you've been able to build something that has real meaning and value. How did you actually build a company that heals instead of depletes?
Well, we did it very intentionally. So first we built the nonprofit, then we built the for-profit, and then we built the holding company. And the way we structured it is that the holding company gets a licensing fee from the operating companies. And so it allows us to scale and always have an IP revenue stream that comes off the top. And then the net profits is what is donated. That gives us a structural advantage many ways. Number one, we can get foundation money that other CPG companies can't get because I have a nonprofit, and that helps with our brand. When we can tell stories about helping people, we don't have to have Super Bowl ads because our actual mission does the marketing for us. Imagine that. Makes it so easy. And then the other advantage is that we can keep everything in our ecosystem. So as I was explaining to you earlier backstage, not only do we help mothers and stabilize them in a crisis, but then we have workforce development where we help teach them how to sell products live. And that helps them have an income from home, but also feeds back into our sales. So we've just created an ecosystem where every single entity helps enforce the whole system instead of extract. So every time a dollar comes in, it helps everybody.
That's an amazing model, and that's very similar to the ecosystem that we've developed at Cherry Willow as well, where all of the nonprofits that we partner with, we have 60 different nonprofits that we have created apparel collaborations with. And, we create the e-commerce shop for them. We do an 80-20 profit share with our nonprofit partners. So, all that we really do is just ask for their input during the design phase. And then once we have the designs created and we get the shop set up, then it's just completely turnkey where, they have their dashboard, they're able to monitor the revenue that comes in from the sales of the merchandise, and then the stories that go along with it. Like, by supporting these nonprofits that are aligned with our work, it just, again, it brings people in that are socially minded, that are interested in making a difference, and it helps them get connected with, a network of other organizations that maybe they hadn't. And so it's like being able to extend the reach of not only Cherry Willow, but all of the 60 partners. And then every partner we bring in, they bring in a new audience. And now we're helping, all of these amazing organizations get connected with people that didn't necessarily know that they were there. That's something that, like, from a marketing and branding background, most of these nonprofits are amazing at what they do. They provide incredible services, and the people that they receive those services know how valuable they are. But maybe where they don't have the opportunity to pour more into is explaining to the communities that they operate in, like, how valuable it is to the people in those communities that aren't receiving the direct services. And that's where, your volunteers, your donors, your staff are actually what is driving that ecosystem. And they're able to tell the stories of, like, why they care about, Cherry Willow, or how Mom Bomb has impacted their life, and just empowering people to tell their stories and encouraging them to share. And it helps bring in all these wonderful connections that, could turn into a potential donor, could turn into a sponsor or a volunteer, because there's always an amazing cause out there that, people could support.
Well, and it's a great point. And it also goes back to, companies and brands spend so much time manufacturing authenticity and connection. We have it. It's real. We don't have to manufacture it. What is that worth? What is it worth to work for a company that actually takes care of people? What does that do to you? I can tell you that I probably wouldn't have gotten so sick if I hadn't given so many years to corporate America, sacrificing my values. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, not only are the communities more healthy, but internally our employees are more healthy. Our customers feel it. Everything we do can come from an authentic place because it's not manufactured.
Yeah. And I think that's really well said. And I think, I do a lot of research and studying on stress and how stress, impacts your health. And I think that, from learning from my mom, I think she was someone that took on the stress of everyone in her life, and it's a very motherly thing to do. If anything was going wrong in any of her loved ones' lives, she's like, oh, there's something more I could have done, this and that. But I think that stress, materialized itself into the cancer that she has been battling. And, that was just obviously a contributing factor. But you look at, like, the food system and a lot of the chemicals that are in there, because they allow for the corporations that make them to be more profitable, right? Because they put the preservative in because it extends the shelf life. They engineer the food to make it not substantive, so that way you're wanting to eat more so that you buy more. And, then when you get sick, then you go into the medical system, which is the largest industry in this country, and is a large reason why a lot of people actually end up on the streets. Is, they lose their job. They're no longer capable of producing a profit for someone else. They lose their health care. They have this medical debt that piles up, and they have no income to be able to pay it. And so then what happens to them is, they end up on the street or in a shelter if they're fortunate enough to have one in their community. And, it's just it's a negative perpetuating cycle, and it doesn't have to be that way. And that's why I love the opportunity to meet with people like you, who are, living examples of a different model, and still being able to provide for, yourself and your family and the people in your organization. So I was curious, like, how do you kind of operationalize the purpose inside of the company, beyond just, the messaging and the branding?
Well, the two organizations work separately. So we have an operating nonprofit and a whole staff that runs that. And then we have the for-profit CPG, because they're just so different, but there is some overlap when it comes to, brand and messaging and things like that. So we try to, use people in as expeditiously as possible in the best way. Um, it's not easy, and because also I didn't know CPG when I started, so that was the other thing. I started thinking, how hard could it be? I sell my products in Whole Foods. Oh my. Well, it's more difficult than I thought. Like things that you would never imagine could go wrong. Just for instance, last year we sold our first shippers. And if you've ever been in the supermarket, those big cardboard things are called shippers. We sold 109 of them to a supermarket chain on the West Coast for Christmas. So we made them, delivered them. And then in February, I got a message that the person at the distribution company forgot to allocate them, which means they never got shipped. They never went out on the floor. So like things like that you don't even know happened until Christmas is over and nothing is, just crazy things all the time. So that's been a whole learning curve.
Yeah, I think the supply chain side of things, like also from an apparel organization, like you're coordinating with blanks, you're getting the printing materials, and then the delivery with the logistics. Like there's just so many places where actually having a physical product, it brings complexity into the deals, and especially in e-commerce, people buying online. So like how do we streamline that experience? And so what are some of the ways that you have been the most successful in just getting to share about like your brand and your ecosystem?
I've been really, really lucky in that like the partners we've had have been really good at working with us. So I'll give you an example. A big supermarket chain on the East Coast here. I don't know if you know this, but there's slotting fees. So slotting fees are like you have to pay for play on the supermarket shelves. Well, sometimes they can be like, it was $11,000 a product at this one supermarket chain.
Wow.
So they wanted 4. So it was going to be $44,000. Listen, if I had $44,000 to throw around, I'd help 100, million mothers. Yeah. So I was like, this is not going to work. So I went to them and I was like, listen, I have a nonprofit. Why don't you donate the slotting fees to the nonprofit? It hits your balance sheet the same way. It won't matter to you. And then I don't have to pay it. And then I'll do a press release that you donated to my nonprofit. And they said yes. So now our products are going to be in there. I didn't have to pay the $44,000. They get the PR. Everybody wins.
That's so creative. And I love that because that's like, again, something similar and we're trying to get better about things like that. But we did a bike ride. I do these long distance bike rides that I mentioned. So, that's a great way for businesses. Like, hey, if you want to support, you can actually help us, with in-kind donations, or, to your point, you're still getting the value of that slotting. It's just in a different, bucket of money. Yeah.
That's all it is. But to your point about the systems that we've all opted into that we never really opted into is that a lot of the people in the organization don't know that it works that way. So like my buyer didn't know. She was like, we're never going to be able to do that. I'm like, yes, you will. Take this note to your CFO. It'll be fine. They don't know, but they don't even, here's the wackiest part. A lot of these buyers don't even know that the products that they're buying are bad for you. So when I tell them that I'm a natural alternative to the #1 seller in the US, they say, what? They say, I thought it was natural. I said, no, it's not natural at all.
No, it's marketing.
So that's that, right. I say it's marketers and lab coats calling themselves doctors, like. Yeah.
Well, I love like one of the on food, like if it says natural flavors, that's just because they didn't have like a name for the chemical that went in there.
Right. So then it's like, then you're like, what am I eating? What am I buying? What is this? So yeah, it is a wild world of consumer products, as you know.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And when that's the other thing. Like if you're not trying to get funded, everybody is pretty open. So everybody else, besides the people who you need to give you money, are very willing to work with you. I have a staff of 10, and all of us are on future equity agreements. So they have full-time jobs. They are the most professional. They are the top of their game. My product formulator works for Estee Lauder as a chemist during the day in New York City. Like, wow. My head of brand created Progressive's Flow, the most known character in all of advertising. Like these are the top of the top, and they all have full-time jobs, but they see what we're doing. You can't get people to work for future equity that doesn't technically exist for a for-profit company like that. like these are the things that I don't think transactional people understand are important in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%. And like, that's very, it seems like there's a lot of synergy between what we're doing in our model. Cause yeah, we've built a lot of what we've built is on similar, like deferred compensation equity piece, because, as a startup brand, like I've invested $60,000-$70,000 into building this over the last couple of years without taking money out, and all while having a full-time job, and being a single dad with 3 kids. And it's just like, there's only so much bandwidth that you can have. But at the same time, like we have some extremely talented people on the team that have been here because they believe in the work. Like Shauna, our director of impact, she's in Orlando and she has probably made 50 of the 60 partnerships. Like she's just incredibly talented. And she's a single mom, and so she works in foster care and is very familiar with the nonprofit world. Dana, who's our director of compliance, she's helped 40 nonprofits get off the ground. And like these are the type of people that when you have something that's a mission that you're building, like they see the vision and they want to be a part of it. And without them, we wouldn't be here. Like I don't have those skills. Like I don't have the nonprofit skills.
Well, but here's the thing too, Matt, is like in the good old days, this is how people used to start companies. When you had something that you all were building together, we all got in a garage, right? That's the story we were sold, at least, is that a bunch of people got together in a garage and they built something together and they grew it together. And that we've gotten away from that with our values as American companies. So I think we're seeing a lot of just getting back to the values that we've strayed from over the past 40 years. And every day Main Street is ready and we're doing it. It's just Wall Street hasn't caught up yet, as usual.
Yeah. Well, and like the money, like it has driven people, but I think with AI, you look at now, people are, thought work is now being able to be replaced. Whereas, like in the Industrial Revolution, it was the machine and the labor that was getting optimized, for profitability. But now the AI is coming after thought work. And I think just some of the things, and it's particularly how this administration operates, is like things that have been kind of going on in the background for a long time. They are all just right in your face now. And it's like, they're just like, nope, there's no denying that these are how we've created these systems. These are how we extract value from these systems. And we're going to blame these people for not having enough money. And like, we're going to get rid of people just simply because we can, and for profitability. And so I think that that's really fostered more people to, take on fractional work. Like to your point of how you built your team, most people they have an income generating job, but they also recognize, and this was, my story, I was working for a startup, was making the best money that I'd made. And, 6 months in, we get laid off because there was a disagreement between, the venture capital company, the founder, the board, whatever the case. And so it's like the job is the illusion of security. That's where, it. If you really want to be secure, you have to build something for yourself, and that's why I love working with Jesse in the live streaming, because like building a personal brand. And that's why I talk any like high school, college age kids, I talk like start building that personal brand now, because that's going to be a huge advantage as you get into the workforce and as things progress. They're not just going to be hiring individuals, they're going to be hiring brands.
Well, that's it. And it's a distribution model. I mean, when I was growing up, there were 3 TV stations. Okay. So when you talk about programming, we were all programmed on the same stations to do the same things. Now there's so much distribution that it's very hard to get a message out to any sort of demographic. So it really is the people are the brands. And that's why I feel like we, especially Matt, have such a good opportunity, because we're not trying to pretend to be something we're not. Like, we're like, here's what we're doing. We're giving it away because this is the right thing to do. Who else would like to join us? And that's a different ethos than I'm going to make so much money. Come along.
Right. Yeah. And it's also like, then you attract, like the law of attraction, you attract like-minded individuals that are here for the right reasons. And, that's something like in startups, your first 6 people are your culture, and like, you can't change those first 6 people. Once they're there, they're there. So like being able to onboard people in a way where it's like, hey, this is what we're building. we're only asking an hour or two a week. We understand you have other things going on for income, but like, do you want to be a part of this? And then they're like, yeah, because then not only are you getting, people that aren't there for the money, but you're also people that are like really passionate and excited for an opportunity to build something that they believe in. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, and the journey that you're taking with them. I mean, the real, like you were talking about, like dealing with everything that your mother went through. The journey was where you had the lessons, us messing up together and us figuring things out forward together and us not knowing what we're doing is part of the bonding experience of what is going to make us be around. And so, we always talk about that. We always laugh because I say, like, we are not running an airline. Nobody's going to die over bath bombs. Like, it doesn't matter. It's not that serious. So, I mean, there might be a day when Walmart calls and it might be that serious, but right now it's not that serious,
Yeah. Yeah. And, and like, that's like for the space that we're working is we're just trying to support these nonprofits and, give them the ability to use apparel as a fundraising tool, start working to help them with their marketing and branding and just telling their story because they're already doing amazing work.
It's such a great vehicle for them to be able to have pride of what they're doing too. I mean, there's so well, and that's the other, that's the other thing we don't talk about when we talk about nonprofit is that nonprofit is a business and it needs business budgets.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like people who donate to nonprofits feel as though the people who, work there should also be volunteering their time, but they're working as well. And these need to be funded. So the fact that they have marketing budgets is a great indicator that they're being run like businesses. So that's a huge fact, like a huge factor in what you've got going on.
Well, and we're trying to help introduce that, or expand on what they're already doing. And, they can do it in a way that it's not adding a ton of, workload to them. Because generally, at least in my experience, most of these nonprofits have incredible people that are already trying to do emotionally work. And yeah, so, we designed our partnerships to make it turnkey. So, all they have to do is share about the apparel that they're doing and then collect the money that comes in from the sales. And like that alone, just like getting in the habit of sharing the work that you're doing. You don't have to come up with these ridiculous campaigns and things like that. Like, authenticity is something that, gets talked about a lot. And what we were talking about earlier, where we're very fortunate because we built this and by being our authentic selves, like we're not trying to be anything other than ourselves and share our story. But I think, authentic leadership gets kind of misunderstood of what that can be, or it can be kind of more performative. So, what does authentic leadership look like for you and how you lead your organizations?
Well, it's a good thing we don't have an HR department. That's how authentic we are. Okay. But I mean, this is the thing. I don't love hierarchy. Like, I just don't like it. So I don't have it. I'm the type of person that's like, if we're going to make rules, we live by the rules, we die by the rules. So let's just not have rules. I mean, we'll have SOPs, but I don't want rules. So like, I'm a leader that's like, we are all doing this together. I am no better than you. You are no better than me. We are in it together. We rise together. We fail together. That's how it goes. And so everything's pretty easy. I mean, like, I just have a great team and they like what they're doing and they're great people and I love them. And it's pretty easy.
Yeah. And that's very much, how we operate too. And I don't know if you've ever read the book. It's called Who, Not How.
No. Ooh. Tell me about it.
On your radar. But it's essentially like we are trained and like I like to say, like we're conditioned to think a certain way, and kind of as we talked about, like societally, these different things, like, oh, this is just how it is. But we're conditioned, like if we run into a problem, like how am I going to solve this problem? And so one of the tenets in the book is like, instead of thinking, how am I going to solve this problem, is who is great at this that would love to help me solve that problem. And so that's really, what it sounds like for you that you've built out with your team is like, I know that I'm not the best maybe head of brand. So I want to bring in someone that's extremely talented at brand. I know I'm not a chemist. So like, I'm going to bring in somebody that can do the chemistry stuff, because that's certainly
well, that's it. but also I didn't realize that when I started, like, because I was used to doing everything. So it took me a while to not take everything and let people do things. And then once I realized that I don't have to do everything, I was like, oh, now my life is it's easier now. What is happening here? I'm not sure. Because when you start, everything's in your head. You have
Yeah.
to striate it yourself, So it was a process. Like, even like, my husband is the operations manager and our CFO. Okay. I wouldn't even want to trust him to do things. You know what I'm saying? But now it's fine because we do it. We have a rhythm. It's all perfect. It took 7 years. We didn't get
Yeah.
divorced. So that's good. And everything's fine. But we worked it out. And I think that's like anything else. You know what I kind of equate it to, like my team we're kind of like siblings. We're all about the same age. We all have the same references. It's kind of like siblings. Everybody annoys each other at different moments.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, like, I think a lot of founders, they can struggle with, like, being the one that steers the ship, and also like attaching their ego to their idea, which, I think that's a big mistake. If you're like, well, this is the problem that I'm going to solve, but once you bring it to market, if you're not receptive to the feedback and you just continue to build whatever it is that you want to build, like that's where a lot of, I think, companies can go down a bad route. And so it is definitely something that you have to kind of take away from yourself and learn. And as, like, my team will share, like, I always just volunteer myself for things that I shouldn't be volunteering myself for. But it's like, I was like, well, if it needs to be done, I'll try to do it. And they're like, Matt, that's not something that you should be doing. Like, you better do it over these things over here. So I completely understand what you're saying. And for me, it's not like a trust thing. It's more like if it's my organization and I want to help and support, and just, like, kind of recognizing what is the best way that I can help and support. And for me, like, that's actually focusing on, more of the sales, the marketing, more of the branding side, social media, and not maybe operations, which is just maybe not one of my strong suits. And so you kind of have to have that self-awareness and recognize, like, what you're good at, and be able to find really talented people that are good at the things that you're not good at, and empower them. I think
that says so much about you, though, that you were willing to be redirected, because it took me a while to figure out I was butting in and effing things up. Okay. Because I would get in the middle of it, and then people would think that I wanted information I didn't want because I inserted myself. So I have now come to the edict where I say, tell me to get the F out of the conversation. Just tell me, not get out. And they know they can, and that's fine. Like, you can't hurt. That's kind of the other rule. Like, we talk about ego, like, you can't have one. You just can't let your feelings get hurt. I always tell people, like, you cannot hurt my feelings. Like, you can't. We all have the same desired outcome. That is to make the organization successful. So if what you have to tell me you think is uncomfortable and it's going to make the organization better, just tell me. It'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm very much the same way. It's like, believe me, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, please, we're in the trust tree, like, just tell me your honest thoughts. And even if I disagree, like, I'll provide that feedback, and then, we can have a conversation about it. But if things go uncommunicated, like, that's where things start to fester, and then they blow up, and they get, that's where a small problem turns into a big problem, if there's not a comfortable way to communicate. And I think that, from what you shared, like, being able to be authentic and just, hey, we encourage to just bring everything to the table. That was something that I really loved from my couple of startups that I was with before, starting Cherry Willow. And that's not usually what you see in corporate. Corporate, from my 8 years, it's very much top down, whereas, like, this is just the direction. And I think that's a huge mistake, because they're leaving so much knowledge on the table from the people that are at the ground level, because they actually are dealing with the clients and the customers, and they know what they need, and they know what those problems are. And I think just too many people, they don't listen to the people, that are at the ground floor doing the work every day. And I think that's a huge mistake that a lot of, large corporations tend to make.
Oh, all the intel, you nailed it. All of the intel is at the ground level. And, like, I'll give you a perfect example. I have an executive vice president at Unify, which is the largest natural food distributor, who is going to be an advisor of mine. It's the agreement is in Unify's legal department. That's unheard of. Okay. We don't even do it. We haven't even done $1 million this year. Okay. But that's unheard of. And the reason is because I had to get her into a situation to help me because nobody was doing what they were supposed to do. And so because of that, we ended up with a great relationship and she was willing to be an advisor in my company. But if you don't have those conversations with the people on the street, like I'm her boots on the street now because I brought her intel in her own company that she didn't have because
Right.
the wheels were flying off the bus. So that's, I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it. But when you do that and you go up the chain and you say, hey, listen, you might want to know about this down on the street. You know, I do get a good reception, but there's opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the organization, and some leaders are better about creating that ecosystem for collaboration and driving curiosity and thought. And that's more common, I think, in startup space, where it's like the best idea will win. It doesn't matter where it comes from, and then also being like extremely customer focused. So I'd love a little bit of knowledge of like how do you currently get feedback from your clients. And maybe if there's any stories of how you've incorporated some of that feedback, from clients, I would love to learn about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really funny. You talked early about not iterating fast enough when you get feedback, and that was actually one of my fatal flaws. I started this company with one like brand look in mind, and I was attached to it. I was attached to it, and we did really well. But sometimes the universe, as you said earlier, has other plans, and things were going well and we had a great trajectory. And then all of a sudden, my husband and I were hit on the highway and our car was totaled and it took us out for about a year. During
Whoa.
that time, we had a buyer tell us that she wasn't going to bring the brand back in because she didn't like the packaging. And I was mad. I was like, what is wrong with you? I've won awards. You obviously don't know what you're talking about. She's the buyer, okay? Like,
Yeah.
who am I? Right? So, but during that time, because I was kind of taken out of the game, it really gave me the opportunity to think like maybe I should rebrand this whole thing if that's the feedback I'm getting. And we did, and our sales have tripled since. So
wow. Well, that's really cool. And that actually reminds me of a philosophy. I study a lot of philosophy, or I really enjoy philosophy. And it's called The Story of the Chinese Farmer. I don't know if you've ever heard it before.
No, tell me.
Okay, well, if you've listened to these live streams, I've probably shared it on here before. But Alan Watts is the person who introduced it to me. I mean, not personally. It was, he died in the 60s. But like, it's essentially about a story where, there's a farmer out working in his fields one day with a horse, and the horse runs away. And, all of the villagers, they come over and they're like, oh, what a terrible thing. Your family won't be able to farm the fields anymore. How are you going to do this? And he's like, oh, well, maybe. The next day, the horse comes back. It brings with it 7 wild horses. Again, all of the villagers and his neighbors come over and like, wow, what a great blessing for you and your family. You now have all of these horses. What a wonderful blessing for your family. Again, the farmer responds, maybe. The day after that, his son is out trying to break one of the wild horses. He falls off and breaks his back. Again, the villagers and the neighbors, they come over and like, oh, what a terrible tragedy. This is such a terrible thing that's happened to your family. How is your son going to live? And, the farmer's like, well, maybe. The day after that, the Chinese army comes around to conscript soldiers into the army. They pass on his son due to his broken back. Again, the villagers come around, oh, what a great blessing. Your son doesn't have to go off to war. What a great blessing for your family. Again, the farmer responds, maybe. And so the whole point of the story is that you never really know the consequences of good fortune, nor do you know the consequences of misfortune. And, in the story that you shared, this car accident gave you an opportunity to kind of step back and be receptive to feedback that then ended up tripling the sales for your business. And so I'm sure when you got into that car accident, you probably thought it was really terrible and was taking you out. But because of how you were able to look at it, you were able to, turn it into something good. And so that's like a lesson that I try to live my life with is, what you thought might be one of the worst things that ever happened to you or one of the biggest mistakes you ever made could turn out to be one of the best things that ever happened to you and one of the biggest blessings, if you're able to have a unique mindset and kind of take more distance and look at it.
Literally, Matt, you said you have 3 children. If you teach them nothing else, that lesson is the most important. I have goosebumps everywhere because being able to reframe disappointment into potential opportunity is the only reason I'm alive today, quite frankly. I mean,
Wow.
you just, everything is an opportunity and you never know. I mean, some of the craziest things have happened to me that should have taken me out, that were the best things that you would never know until hindsight. So it's just, and that's really, that's when I think about my own kids, that's what I spend a lot of my time teaching them, because they're so reactive to things, because they're still learning and they're young and they don't know, if they don't know how to value feedback. Is it terrible or is it bad? You said no, that must be really bad. Well, maybe it's really good. You don't know. So that's just amazing. I just think that is incredible, because it's a skill, it's a mindset, but there's a lot more people today that have that mindset than did when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're on a good trajectory, I feel like.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, it's something that I've embodied, and like there's a personal story within my family. Actually, I have a ship right here. So this was the USS Reuben James, and my grandfather served on that ship as a machinist in World War II, prior to World War II. And one day he was working with an air chisel, and the tip of it misfired, zoom, like foot or two from the chief engineer's head. So then the next time the ship came to port, there was another American ship that needed machinists, and the chief engineer, was like, "We'll get this Fogarty guy off my ship. The guy almost killed me." On the Reuben James' next voyage, it was hit by a German U-boat and sunk. It was the first U.S. ship sunk prior to our involvement in World War II. And so my grandfather wrote a letter, and he was like, if I didn't make that mistake, I die, And so my entire family would have never existed had my grandfather not made a mistake on the ship that day. And so like if once you become skilled at like looking for it, there's a lot of different ways where you can become grateful for challenging experiences that you endured.
That is incredible. That is an incredible story. It's an incredible tattoo. My husband retired from the Coast Guard, so I have a lot of. We are very, thank him for his service. But it's zooming out, right? It's about how long of a timeline you want to look at that event over, which will determine the impact it has on you. And that's how you just have to, like, it's just a reframe. It's not even, it's nothing else than just a juxtaposition of a timeline.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Where do you live? We need to hang out. Where have you been all my life?
I'm in Chicago area. Where are you at?
I'm in Boston. Do you ever come out?
I'll probably be doing more traveling to the East Coast. So yeah, definitely would love to hang out. I had a great feeling we were gonna have a lot of synergy, just based on your energy.
Incredible. And I want to sponsor your bike rides, because like we sell, like Epsom salt is what we sell, and like isn't that what everybody uses after you're done riding all day? So
probably more sophisticated people than me. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, if I can support, sponsor, like whatever you need, I'm in.
Yeah. Let's have a call, because we have our ride coming up in Florida, where I'm going from Jacksonville to Miami in a few weeks, and we're working on sponsors. Would love to have that conversation. So yeah, I'll definitely, we can do that offline.
So great. I can't believe this. All right, well, we're just gonna have a personal conversation and anybody can listen. I need to know, how old are your children?
They are 11, 10, and 8. I have a boy and 2 girls.
How cute. Those are the best ages. They're so cute.
They are. They're sweet.
Yeah, they're not totally fresh yet. Like they're not totally, like they're not teenagers.
No, my son is really transitioning. He's starting to smell a little bit. You gotta put on deodorant, bud.
Well, wait, when he turns about 16, he's gonna cover himself in Axe. So that's then he'll be covered.
That's the transformation. But I'm trying to embrace, like, this is the last year they're all in elementary school. Next year he goes to middle school. So really, I do my best to be as fully present with the kiddos as I can be. But as you know, it can be really challenging. Trying to run a business, a nonprofit, and still find time to be present for the kids. But I'm actually reading a book right now called Scattered Minds. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, tell me.
Dr. Gabor Mate, but he talks about like ADHD and some of the generational components of like how children develop ADHD. And a lot of it is like they are so receptive to the stress of the family. And then also, hypersensitive to, like attention deficit. You think of it as like, oh, the kid has an attention deficit, where it's like, no, they're feeling a deficit of attention towards them. So then they lash out. And like, that's how they get the attention that they're seeking, because their parents are distracted. And
that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense that the attention deficit is not them; they're receiving the attention. I mean, yeah. Why did we just figure that out?
Well, I don't know. This Dr. Gabor Mate, he's a pretty brilliant guy. So I don't know. I love learning about books, because I probably could have fallen into the ADHD category as a kid. Where it's like I was pretty smart, so I didn't have to study. I just could kind of show up and remember things. But I never loved like the systems that we were in, and like if I would question them, then I would get like like, oh, we don't ask that, or we don't do that, or whatever. So then I just like, all right, well, everybody else can't be wrong. I must be the one that's wrong. And then that's what a lot of kids that think differently or are neurodivergent, that's how they feel. And again, if you aren't able to recognize that, and just going through stress, like stress manifests itself in a lot of different ways. But yeah, so how old are your kiddos?
You said two very important things. They're
okay.
Old. Like the last one is 20. So I am so lucky that I only have to deal with them when they bring their laundry home. But you said two really interesting things. And one is that they're tapping into like the energy of the family, which is the reason I wanted to stabilize mothers, because mothers hold the energy for the family. When the mother goes down, everybody goes down. We're the ones that determine, whether the family's going to be in a good mood tonight or whether we're in a bad mood, and everybody suffers. That's how it goes. So that's very, very astute. And I think that's unreal. But you said something else about, I'm trying to remember now. You said something about the systems. Oh, about neurodivergent. I actually think that the systems were written by the neurodivergent people, and we just happen to be able to think like more than one lane. We're just not single focused, and that's been reclassified as a problem, but I kind of think it's a superpower.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's an asset if properly fostered. But like what a lot of kids deal with, at least that I've seen, and if they don't fit into the box that they're designed to fit into, then they start to question themselves, and like that's where it can become very negative, or it's like, well, I don't sit still. Like I don't sit still. I've never had an office job. I would not be good in an office job because I need to move around a lot, and I like to talk to people and connect with people, and that's one of my gifts and skills. Which is why I'm not an accountant, because I couldn't sit there. That's right. Sit there at the screen and punch numbers all day, even though I was good at math. So it's like you have these different pathways that you can kind of go down. But yeah, it's just really interesting, and I always love learning about the world, and I think you can learn from everybody too, which I think is a mindset that more people could adopt.
Well, that curiosity will never. I mean, like even. So here's a funny story. It's kind of off color. Hopefully this is it. I was out in Boston with my husband on Saturday night. We're sitting at a bar. It's really high end bar, and I said to the bartender, "What is the craziest stuff you hear back here?" Because he's like 2 feet away from me. He has to hear everything, right? So I'm like, "What do you hear?" So we end up having this conversation about aligned incentives around the fact that when the ladies of the night come into the hotel, that he works with them to extract as much as they can fiduciarily out of the customers, Johns, so that they all can maximize their returns. And I thought, like, why not? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah. So just being curious gets you a lot of information. You could just be curious.
Yeah, and it's a skill. Like I think it's a skill that can be developed, and curiosity I think is one of the most underrated skills that people can have.
And people love to talk about themselves. So if you're ever at a cocktail party and you're like, I don't like small talk, don't. Just ask me, oh, where are you from? What do you do? What did your father do growing up? How many siblings do you have? There's a million questions you can ask. And they might say you're nosy. I get accused of being nosy, but I'd rather that than stand awkwardly around somebody and not know what to say. So you know?
You'll get much further in life if you take an interest in others than trying to support, promote yourself. So.
And you'll have a lot of friends and people will come to your parties. I mean, there's many benefits to just being a friendly person. It's not hard.
So I have one last question because I know we're running on time. So for founders that are listening and watching and maybe are inspired by our stories and they wanted to take a step towards, making their company more purpose-led, what would you suggest to anyone out there in that situation?
I'm struggling with that now because I'm in the thick of the scale. And because I'm in the thick of the scale, I'm in hell, frankly. So I feel like I have to crack the code for like how we can do an investable company that's mission based before we can give people advice, because it's been so bastardized. I mean, look at Ben and Jerry's, Tom's Shoes, 7th Generation. All of them had their mission extracted out of it as soon as funders came in. So until we can figure out how not to make purpose and profits fight with each other, I don't know what the answer is. I think I have the answer, but until I'm successful and get funded, nobody's going to listen to me. So watch the space, I guess, is the answer.
Okay. Monitor the situation, as the kids say. That's the name. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and learn more about the amazing work that you're doing at MomBomb. And so for anyone that, is watching the show, what's the best way to stay connected with you and your work?
I would say find me on LinkedIn. Heather Roberts, Mother of All Bombs is my username. I'm also on TikTok and Facebook, and you can email me directly. It's Moab, MOAB, at buybombshelpmoms.com.
And that's why I asked if you were a history buff, because, the mother of all bombs, that's a interesting historical connotations there as well.
Well, we're going to try to blow up CPG. That's the plan. So
there you go, man.
Let's
just
see if we can do
brand,
it.
On point, doesn't miss a beat.
This was the best conversation, Matt. I can't wait to meet you. Thank you so much. This is just so great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And we'll definitely, I'll send an email and reach out to make sure that we're in communication that way. And let's set up a time to talk about the Pedal for Progress Florida and how we can have, MomBomb be a part of that. I'm really excited. I had no expectations coming into this, and you're so energetic, and that's why I just love connecting with people. You never know what you're gonna get, but if you put yourself out there and you do it in an authentic way, good things happen more often than not.
Well, and also we're going to be a customer of Cherry Willow now, like obviously. So like we need swag. So like it's all going to work out. Like this is how the world works. Like it's a team sport. That's the other for any entrepreneurs watching. It's a team sport. Like I'll help you with anything. I'll be honest. It might not always be the most, you'll be honest. You'll get the real deal. Like an offer. Yeah. So anyway.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Heather. I really enjoyed this conversation as well. This was a ton of fun. And I'm excited to see how, Cherry Willow and MomBomb can continue to collaborate and support each other. And thank you just for sharing your story and doing the amazing work that you're doing to support moms. It's one of the most difficult jobs. I love those videos. It's like, oh, what's a 24/7 job that you get no pay and you have to sacrifice yourself always as a mom. So just thank you for the great representation.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thanks for joining. And we'll be back doing more of these regularly soon. So, please continue to stay tuned to Cherry Willow and our channels. And we'll be sharing more about the ride that MomBomb is going to be sponsoring, the Pedal for Progress. So super excited about that. And thank you just for watching. It always means a lot to be able to, share a little bit of our story with our audience. So appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday evening.